Imagine this: you're arguing with someone you love. Your voice sharpens, your hands tremble, and a sentence escapes your lips, cruel, precise, familiar, that shocks even you. In the silence that follows, a chilling thought arises. Where did that come from? You stare at your reflection later, searching for the stranger who hijacked your tongue. The face staring back is yours, yet not yours. Somewhere in the darkness behind your eyes, a shadow stirs. This is not a ghost story. This is the paradox Carl Jung warned us about. The brighter your ideals, the darker your shadow grows. You spend your life crafting a persona, kind, moral, controlled. But every virtue you cling to casts an inverse silhouette. The angrier you swear you aren't, the more fury pools in your unconscious. The more you insist on your generosity, the greedier your hidden self becomes. Your shadow is not your enemy. It is the disowned debris of every identity you've ever claimed. And here's the trap: the more you deny it, the more it owns you. Think of the last time you lied to yourself. Not the white lies, "I'm fine." It doesn't hurt, but the corrosive ones. The moment you buried envy beneath performative praise. The time you crushed a creative impulse because it felt too selfish. Why do we sabotage jobs, relationships, dreams, only to whisper, "I don't know why I did that"? Jung's answer is terrifying in its simplicity. You did know. You just refused to see. Society rewards the persona, the polished resume, the Instagram smile, while treating the shadow like a criminal. We numb it with productivity, scold it with spirituality, drown it in affirmations. But here's the unsettling truth: your shadow isn't the problem. Your refusal to face it is. Every time you shame a desire, suppress a memory, or armor yourself in positivity, you feed the shadow's power. It grows denser, hungrier, until it erupts as rage, addiction, or a haunting sense of fraudulence. You call these breakdowns. Jung called them letters from the underworld, written in the ink of your unlived life. Consider the CEO who preaches mindfulness yet explodes at subordinates. The activist who tweets about compassion but secretly relishes canceling others. The parent who sacrifices everything for their child and resents them for it. These aren't hypocrisies. They're symptoms of a psyche at war with itself. The shadow doesn't care about your morals. It cares about truth. Deny it, and it will hijack your relationships, your decisions, your very sense of meaning. But confront it. That's where the paradox twists. Your darkest corners hold the very nutrients your soul needs to breathe. Why do we fear this so deeply? Because the shadow isn't just personal, it's ancestral. It's the collective rot of centuries, colonialism, patriarchy, genocide, that lives in our bones. Every civilized society is built on layers of unacknowledged violence. We inherit these wounds like dormant viruses. Your grandfather's unspoken shame, your culture's buried atrocities, the primal instincts evolution hasn't erased. They are all there, pulsing in your shadow. To face it is to stare into the abyss of what it means to be human. But what if the abyss stares back with your own eyes? Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The question isn't whether your shadow controls you. It's how. Does it whisper self-sabotage into your ambitions? Does it mold your attractions, your political views, your deepest fears? Does it wear the face of someone you hate, a boss, a parent, a rival, because projecting it outward feels safer than admitting it's yours? Here's the great seduction. You've been taught that healing is about transcending your darkness. But what if freedom lies in the opposite direction? What if your rage holds the key to boundaries you've never set? Your greed contains the unmet needs that could guide you to authentic desire. Your petness, your lust, your narcissism. What if these aren't flaws to purge but signposts to the self you've abandoned? The clock is ticking. Every day you spend clinging to your persona, the shadow grows more inventive. It becomes the migraine that strikes before a big presentation, the affair you never planned, the depression that feels like quicksand. It will speak in symptoms until you speak to it. But how? How do you negotiate with a ghost? And what happens when you realize the ghost is you? This is the edge Jung dares you to stand upon. Not to love your darkness, that's spiritual bypassing, but to dismantle the lie of separation. The saint and the sinner, the light and the dark, the keeper of the mask and the thing snarling beneath it. What if they're not opposites but two halves of a fractured whole? What if integration, not perfection, is the path to becoming real? The door to your shadow is already open. You felt it, in dreams that leave you sweating yet curious, in impulses that electrify and shame you, in the eerie resonance of myths about demons offering forbidden gifts. The key is clutched in the hand you've been taught to hide, but turning it demands a courage no self-help book can teach, the willingness to stop running from the one thing that can never be escaped: yourself. You wake to an alarm you didn't choose. You scroll through a feed of faces happier than yours. You recite affirmations in the mirror while your gut whispers, liar. This is not life, it's a seance. You're haunted by a ghost society taught you to conjure the ideal self, thin enough, rich enough, enlightened enough. But who designed this ghost? And why does its blueprint feel like a prison? The shadow doesn't form in a vacuum. It's the byproduct of a 5,000-year-old war between human nature and civilization's demands. Jung saw this clearly. Society values the light but depends on the dark. Ancient farmers praised sun gods while sacrificing goats in moonlit rituals. Medieval monks transcribed Bibles by day and flagellated themselves by night. Modernity swapped gods for algorithms, but the split remains. We're still Jekyll's funding Hydes, praising productivity while our antidepressants numb the void. Philosophers have long grappled with this fracture. Nietzsche called it the will to power corrupted into ascetic ideals, the way we turn rage inward and call it morality. Schopenhauer saw existence as a blind, hungry will that humans try to cage with reason, only to breed greater suffering. Sartre spat the bitter truth. Hell is other people because they become mirrors for the parts of ourselves we disown. But Jung's genius was in mapping this existential crisis onto the individual psyche. The shadow isn't a metaphor, it's a biological reality. A neural network of repressed impulses, memories, and self-concepts your brain exiled to survive. Survival, that's the key. From birth, you're taught to amputate parts of yourself to belong. A boy learns to bury tenderness lest he be called weak. A girl swallows ambition to avoid being difficult. A culture addicted to progress labels grief unproductive and rage uncivilized. These aren't mere social norms. They're psychic surgeries, performed without anesthesia. Every time you censored a thought to keep a job, a lover, a follower, you fed another scrap of your soul to the shadow. But why does it hurt so much to be whole? Because society thrives on your fragmentation. Huxley's Brave New World wasn't a dystopia, it was a prophecy. Soma, the drug that keeps citizens numb, is now a $40 billion self-care industry peddling mindfulness and toxic positivity. Instagram gurus sell enlightenment like skincare serums. Slather on enough light, and maybe the dark will vanish. But Jung warned, there is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. The more we glorify love and light, the more we exile the messy, vital parts of ourselves to the dungeon. The brain conspires in this betrayal. Neuroscience reveals that repressed emotions don't dissipate, they somatize. Shame you refuse to feel becomes chronic pain. Anger you deny mutates into anxiety. Your prefrontal cortex, that overachieving hall monitor, rationalizes the repression. Stay positive. Forgive, let go. But the limbic system, the ancient raw core of your psyche, knows the truth. It screams through dreams, panic attacks, and compulsive behaviors. You are at war with yourself. Even spirituality, meant to liberate, often becomes another weapon of division. Religions split the self into divine and sinful. New Age movements speak of vibrations and shadow work, reducing the soul's complexity to a self-help checklist. But the shadow defies all binaries. It's not bad, it's unlived. The philanthropist's shadow isn't greed, it's her starved need to receive. The monk's shadow isn't lust, it's his terror of true intimacy. As Zen master D.T. Suzuki said, the ego is the shadow the soul casts. We've mistaken the map for the territory, the persona for the person. The cost of this ignorance, a civilization of sleepwalkers. Jungian analyst Marion Woodman observed clients who'd achieved societal perfection, but felt dead inside. They had the right mask but the wrong eyes. Meanwhile, the collective shadow erupts as political extremism, environmental collapse, and viral hatred. Psychologist Erich Neumann saw nazism not as an aberration, but as the eruption of the archetypal shadow of an entire culture. What you refuse to face in your private psyche, history will manifest on a global scale. But here's the cruelest twist: the very tools we use to fight the shadow strengthen it. Willpower. Nietzsche laughed. Whoever fights monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster. Meditation. Often a spiritual bypass. I'll transcend my humanity rather than inhabit it. Therapy. Useful unless it becomes another performance. Heal faster. Optimize your trauma. Even Jungian analysis risks turning the shadow into a trophy. Look how integrated I am. The problem isn't that we're broken. It's that we've been gaslit by centuries of philosophy, religion, and science to believe wholeness is a flaw. Freud reduced the soul to repressed sexuality. Capitalism commodified it into a personal brand. Descartes split mind from body, and we've been dissociating ever since. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's your ally. It's the part of you that refuses to die for others' comfort, that howls when you abandon your truth, that remembers, in the words of poet Antonio Machado, "You walker, there is no path, only wakes on the sea." But how did we get here? How did Homo sapiens, the animal that painted caves and worshipped stars, become a species that shames its own heartbeat? The answer lies in an ancient bargain we never agreed to. You meet someone who infuriates you. Their voice, their politics, their existence feels like a personal affront. You dissect their flaws with friends, armoring yourself in righteousness. But here's the unspeakable truth. What you loathe in them is a disowned fragment of yourself. Your shadow has mastered alchemy. It turns your inner lead into outer villains. This is not a metaphor. It's neuroscience. Every time you deny a part of yourself, your brain rewires to externalize it. The anterior cingulate cortex, the neural bridge between emotion and reason, goes dark when confronted with traits you've exiled. Instead, the amygdala hijacks your perception, projecting your shadow onto others like a horror movie projector. That coworker who never listens, she's a canvas for your stifled voice. The politician you call a narcissist, a mirror for your own hunger for significance. Jung called this projection, the mind's desperate attempt to cleanse itself by painting its filth on the world. But the filth remains, it festers. The consequences are fractal. In relationships, your shadow becomes a third wheel. You fall in love with someone's light, then rage when their darkness emerges, your darkness, unrecognized. Studies on marital conflict reveal a chilling pattern. The traits partners most viciously attack in each other are often the ones they most fear in themselves. A man who mocks his wife's anxiety secretly trembles at his own inadequacy. A woman who punishes her husband's stoicism has buried her tears so deep she's choking on them. You don't argue with your partner. You argue with your shadow wearing their face. At work, the shadow becomes a saboteur, that promotion you didn't pursue. The imposter syndrome wasn't holding you back. It was the terror of outshining your father, your peers, your own modest self-concept. Creativity dies here. Psychologist Rollo may warn that repression doesn't tame our demons. It domesticates them into bureaucrats. The artist who abandons her craft to be responsible isn't noble. She's a ghost haunting her unlived life. Corporations know this. They profit from it. Your muted rage is channeled into consumerism. Your stifled longing becomes the engine of late-night Amazon scrolls. But the most insidious consequences are somatic. Your body keeps score in a language older than words. Repressed grief calcifies into arthritis. Banished anger metastasizes as hypertension. The vagus nerve, the information superhighway between gut and brain, carries shadow whispers as inflammation, fatigue, autoimmune revolt. Doctors call it psychosomatic. Jung called it the psyche's cry for embodiment. You can numb it with pills, mute it with meditation apps, but the shadow speaks in symptoms until you speak to it. Now zoom out. What happens when an entire culture does this? When millions of exiled shadows coalesce into a collective storm? History answers witch hunts, genocides, climate collapse. Jung saw World War II not as Hitler's madness, but as Germany's collective shadow devouring its soul. Today's algorithms perform the same function. They aggregate our disowned fears into viral conspiracy theories, our buried bigotries into hashtag mobs. The politician you hate, the meme you share, the news that outrages you, they're not random. They're your shadow's fingerprints on the world. Even your spirituality becomes a weapon. The more you strive for higher consciousness, the more your shadow drags you into pettiness. You preach mindfulness but gossip about friends. You chase ecstatic awakening but numb yourself with porn. This isn't failure, it's physics. For every spiritual force, an equal shadow force arises. Buddhist teacher Jungian Trungpa named it spiritual materialism, the ego's final fortress, where enlightenment becomes another mask to hide behind. The greatest tragedy. The shadow steals your soul's dialect. Those midnight cravings for danger, the fascinations with villains in films, the dreams where you're a thief or a seducer, they're not temptations. They're assignations. Your shadow trying to teach you the language you lost when you learned to say, "I'm fine." Poet David Whyte writes, "The price of our vitality is the sum of all our fears. But we've paid with our vitality and kept the fears." You can see it everywhere now. The hollow eyes of successful people, the rage of the woke, the numbness of the medicated. We've built a world on the lie that wholeness is divisible, that you can amputate your darkness and still walk. But a one-legged man doesn't transcend his crutch, he becomes its slave. The clock is ticking. With every repressed scream, your shadow gains territory. It becomes the panic attack before your wedding, the affair you never planned, the inexplicable rage at your child's laughter. It will speak in riddles until you bleed answers. But how do you decipher a language you've spent a lifetime unlearning? Where do you even begin? Begin here. The shadow isn't under your bed. It's in your breath, your heartbeat, the joke you laughed at but wish you hadn't. It's the part of you that already knows what comes next. You stand at the edge of a forest, not a metaphor, a real one. Pine needles crunch underfoot and the air smells of damp earth. In your hand, a lantern. Ahead, a path vanishes into blackness. Society's voice hisses, "Turn back. Good people don't go here." But another voice, older, thrums in your ribs. This is where you begin. Jung's rebellion isn't a protest. It's a pilgrimage into the woods of your own psyche, where the shadow waits not as a monster, but as a deposed king. The first rule of rebellion: stop trying to be good. Not bad, but whole. Goodness, as defined by others, is a cage. Recall Nietzsche's warning, the most dangerous prison is the one you don't know you're in. Your shadow isn't the enemy. It's the part of you that clawed through barbed wire to survive. To integrate it, you must become a double agent, smiling at society while smuggling your exiled selves back across the border of consciousness. Start with the body. Your shadow speaks in symptoms, so reply in kind. When rage tightens your throat, roar into a pillow in a car under a waterfall. When shame heats your cheeks, strip naked and stand before a mirror. Not to affirm self-love, but to whisper, "I see you." Neuroscience confirms this. Physical acts, Chinese letter acceptance, rewire the insular cortex, dissolving the neural walls between you and it. Dance the anger, write the greed. Sculpt the lust from clay. As Jungian analyst James Hollies insists, the body is the shadow's first language. Next, hunt your projections, that colleague who grates your nerves. Keep a journal solely about them. Describe their flaws in vivid detail. Now rewrite each entry, replacing their name with I. The tantrum you blamed on your partner's coldness. It's your orphan need for care. The lazy employee, a reflection of your own stifled rest. This isn't blame, it's reclamation. Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron said it plainly. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But here's the heresy: feed your shadow. Not the ID's chaos, but its unmet hungers. Always attracted to toxic partners. Stop pathologizing and ask what frozen need seeks warmth in their flame. Your compulsive shopping. Don't purge, decode. That jacket you bought but never wore isn't a mistake. It's a hieroglyph from your shadow. I crave beauty. I want to be seen. Even addiction, as Gabor Mate reveals, is a misguided quest for wholeness. The gambler doesn't need sobriety. He needs to confront his terror of insignificance. History's greatest rebels did this. Frida Kahlo painted her pain, her bisexuality, her political rage, became her shadow, and birthed masterpieces. Van Gogh didn't transcend his madness. He channeled it into starry nights that outshined his suffering. Jung himself flirted with psychosis during his Red Book years, conversing with hallucinations to reclaim his soul from academia's corpse. These weren't well-adjusted people. They were alchemists, turning leaden shadows into gold. The rebellion demands ruthless curiosity. When you're gripped by envy, don't spiritualize it. Follow it. Who do I envy? What do they have that I've disowned? A friend's artistic success might mirror your abandoned creativity. A rival's confidence could reflect your own gagged audacity. Even hatred holds nectar. The politician you despise, study their unflinching self-assurance. Your shadow's cry for unapologetic power. This isn't self-indulgence, it's warfare. Capitalism thrives on your fragmentation. Your productivity depends on numbing needs, your consumption on manufactured lack. To integrate your shadow is to become ungovernable. As Foucault exposed, visibility is a trap. But when you stop hiding, the panopticon loses power. Imagine a society of embodied souls who don't crave validation, escape, or enemy-making. That's why the system gaslights you into self-loathing. Your wholeness would collapse its foundations. The path isn't linear. You'll backtrack. Some days the shadow will flood you, a tidal wave of petness or desire. Let it. Jungian analyst Robert A. Johnson calls these spiritual thunderstorms, necessary chaos to water the parched earth of your persona. Other days you'll dissociate, numb, regress. That's when you deploy the ultimate rebel move, mercy. The goal isn't to defeat the shadow, but to court it. Like Rilke's, you must change your life whispered in the ear of your deepest resistance. As you walk this path, a seismic shift occurs. Traits you disown begin to serve you. The selfishness you buried becomes the courage to set boundaries. The arrogance you feared transforms into unshakable self-trust. Even your darkest fantasies lose their sting when brought into daylight. They're just old wounds dressed in mythic garb. But the final rebellion is the hardest. Stop seeking permission. No guru, therapist, or Instagram post can validate your wholeness. As D.H. Lawrence wrote, the soul has a self-awareness which is not mental. You'll know integration is working when your choices terrify good people, when you quit the secure job, when you demand love that nourishes, not numbs. When you finally grasp Viktor Frankl's revelation, between stimulus and response there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our destiny. The forest darkens, the lantern flickers. You feel the shadow's breath on your neck, not threatening but eager. It has waited lifetimes for this, to lead you not to damnation but to the core of your untamed humanity. Jung's secret whispers through the trees. No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. You're in a dream, not a metaphor. This is the dream. You stand in a circular room with no doors, walls lined with mirrors. Each reflection shows a different you, the saint, the tyrant, the child, the seducer, the coward, the hero. A voice booms, choose one. You reach for the kindest face, but it shatters. The cruelest one, it cracks. Panic rises until you laugh. Not a polite chuckle, but a primal roar that shakes the room. The mirrors dissolve. What's left is not a face, but a presence. Ancient, unnameable, whole. This is Jung's ultimate truth. The shadow is not a part of you. You are a part of it. We've been deceived by language itself. Nouns like self and shadow imply separation, but consciousness is a verb, a flickering flame between poles. The moment you say, "I have a shadow," you resurrect the lie of division. The truth: you are the shadow dancing with the light. The saint's compassion flows from the same well as the murderer's rage, the human heart's infinite capacity to feel. Your guilt over dark thoughts, it's not a moral failure. It's the shudder of a limitless soul crammed into the cage of good and evil. Here's the revelation that changes everything. Integration is not a task, it's a homecoming. The shadow doesn't need healing. You need to stop worshiping the wound. For decades, you've begged therapists, gurus, and gods to save you from yourself. But salvation was never the goal, sovereignty is. Jung's final work, The Red Book, reveals this in blood-red calligraphy. The way is not to transcend the human, but to inhabit it so utterly that the divine has no choice but to seep through your cracks. Consider the Ouroboros, the serpent eating its own tail. Alchemists saw it as the ultimate paradox, creation through self-destruction. Your shadow is that serpent. Every time you judge a desire, you tighten its coils. But when you let it consume you, when you dare to be the hunger, the fear, the taboo, the circle breaks. The serpent becomes a bridge. Nietzsche hinted at this in Thus Spoke Zarathustra. You must become a chaos before giving birth to a dancing star. This isn't metaphor. Neuroscience now confirms that the brain's default mode network, the circuitry behind your sense of self, quiets during moments of profound creativity or awe. What you call ego death is actually ego communion, the temporary dissolution of the wall between you and other. The mystic's ecstasy, the artist's flow, the lover's rapture, these are not escapes from the shadow. They are the shadow remembering it is also the light. The implications are cosmic. If your shadow contains all you've denied, then it also holds the inverse of every limitation you've accepted. Your fear of abandonment. The shadow knows your primal capacity to thrive in solitude. Your people-pleasing. The shadow hoards the rebel's power to say no. Even your despair is proof of an inner force vast enough to conjure apocalypse, a force that could, with a turn of the lens, rebuild civilizations. But here's the twist that bends reality. The shadow is not personal. It's transpersonal. A black hole connecting you to every human who's ever lived. When you touch your own darkness, you brush against the caveman who first felt shame, the medieval heretic who doubted God, the future descendant who will inherit your unlived life. Time collapses. Jung called this the collective unconscious, but it's more visceral than academic. It's the electric jolt when you read a millennia-old poem and think, this is about me. It's the déjà vu when you hurt someone and feel the victim become tyrant lineage in your veins. The ultimate freedom, realizing you are the ancestor now. Every shadow you integrate becomes a gene-editing tool for the future. That childhood shame you finally faced. It alters the epigenetic legacy of your bloodline. The rage you channeled into art. It becomes a roadmap for some distant descendant's rebellion. As biologist Elisabeth Sahtouris observed, the universe is a communion of subjects, not a collection of objects. Your shadow work is cosmic activism. So where does this leave you? With a truth so simple it's been hiding in plain sight, the key was never in the shadow. The shadow is the key. The door it unlocks isn't enlightenment, it's embodiment. To feel the full spectrum of existence without apology. To weep at gravesides and chuckle at funerals. To fuck up gloriously, forgive ferociously, and stop keeping score. Jungian analyst Clarissa Pinkola Estes put it best. The doors to the world of the wild self are few but precious. If you have a deep scar, that is a door. If you have an old story, that is a door. If you love the sky and the water so much you almost cannot bear it, that is a door. The final mirror is the world itself. That politician you despise, the lover who broke you, the parent who failed you, they're all your shadow and you are theirs. Not to excuse harm, but to recognize no one can escape the dance. Salvation lies not in fixing the dance, but in deepening it, in letting your feet grow bloody, in holding eye contact with your partner, be it grief, joy, or the silent scream of existence, until the music reveals itself as your own heartbeat. You leave the mirrored room. There's no applause, no certificate of wholeness, just a faint hum in your chest, the sound a star makes as it burns. Jung's words follow you into the waking world. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not a better version, not a healed version. The version, the one already written in the shadow's ink. Now, the choice only you can make: will you keep running from the door? Or will you lay your cheek against its rotten wood, whisper your darkest secret, and let it swing open into a sky so vast, so star-choked, so alive that it can only be called home?